I've got time for 2 more questions. This young lady right here. And then I'll call on you, Jim.
Hi, Alaska's in the house, and I'm from Fairbanks, Alaska. My parents live in New Hampshire. I just happen to be here visiting. So I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to meet you.
Thanks.
You guys never make it to
You know,
Alaska.
it's hard to get to Alaska, I gotta admit. That's a big trip. That's a big trip.
I would like to ask you about your energy policy, about what you are actually thinking of in terms of getting us off fossil fuels, and your opinion on the proposed Alaska natural gas line pipeline.
Number one is to deal with the transportation sector, which generates about half of our greenhouse gases. Maybe not half, about a third. About a third of this just comes from cars and automobiles. So I've already indicated, I've put in a proposal. I want us to have at least a 45 mile per gallon CAFE standard. And that is well within existing technologies. And I've said to the automakers, even though they're not real happy about this, I've said, look, I understand that you guys have legacy retiree costs that you've got to deal with. Part of the reason we need to reform healthcare is to help businesses deal with their healthcare costs. And we actually have a component in our healthcare plan that helps not only people who don't have health insurance, but also employers who are doing the right thing and providing health insurance. We help lower their costs with catastrophic insurance care. So I've said to the auto companies, we'll help you to retool and reinvest, but you can't stand in the way of progress. We need hybrids, plug-in hybrids, flexible fuel vehicles, all those things. And what I've also proposed, and I proposed it here in New Hampshire, was a national low-carbon fuel standard that says not only do we want better mileage, but we want the fuels to go into the cars to be cleaner burning. And so we set a 10% requirement for clean burning fuel in all the fuel mix. You do those two things, we take the equivalent of 50 million cars worth of pollution off the road. And we do that by 2020, fairly soon. So that would be step number one on the transportation side. Now we also have to invest in mass transit to try to discourage people from driving their cars all the time. The next big category is power plants. And power plants in industry. And I've proposed, I am a co-sponsor of the toughest cap and trade system being proposed in Congress right now, along with Bernie Sanders and Barbara Boxer. And basically what we do is we set up a ceiling in terms of the amount of greenhouse emissions. It declines each and every year so that we're ratcheting down the permissible levels of greenhouse gases each year. And if companies don't meet their targets, then they pay through the teeth. Now, if they do even better than their targets, they get credits that they can sell to other companies. So what you've done is you've created a market for carbon and a market for environmentally sound practices. And that means that investors and entrepreneurs now are going to be pouring money into creating the kinds of technologies that we need to meet these goals. And by the way, if you think this sounds like a complicated scheme, this is how we dealt with acid rain. You remember everybody was worried about all the forests were going to be destroyed. You don't hear it about it anymore because we actually did a cap and trade system for sulfur emissions, and it worked, and it was cheaper than companies said it was going to be. Now, the one thing I will say is that it is in an aggressive and properly structured cap and trade system. You charge companies for the initial rights to pollute at all, which generates billions of dollars for us to put into a Manhattan Project or Apollo Project for energy. It will cost a little bit more in terms of energy. I mean, we'll be paying a little more potentially for electricity if we institute this system. And that can potentially be regressive, so that's why we've got to make sure that out of those billions of dollars, some of that money goes back to consumers, people on fixed incomes, etc., so that they're not hurt by this process. People like myself, I can afford to pay a few cents more on my electricity bill, but some people can't. And that's what we have to structure to make sure that it's safe. All right?